talk to us about your experience with the Marine Corps, John. So tell us about your experience, and then because we were talking, last month, you were telling me some stories about afterwards. So I'd love to start diving in there.
I joined the Marine Corps in 2014. This is when I was going to college, and I just that semester, my first semester in college, I just couldn't really dive into it. I wanted a break from schooling, and I didn't want to just like stagnate, just doing a regular job and not do anything that benefits myself. And my original plan was always going to go into the Marine Corps after college and be an officer. I just kind of flipped it the other way around. I was like, let me just go to the Marine Corps now, go enlisted, get the experience, and then I can use my GI Bill to go to college. And that's exactly what I did. I went in 4 years, 2014 to 2018. Was in an infantry unit driving their tactical vehicles. Got to deploy a lot. No combat situation, just your usual training areas, training with different military personnel. So went to Korea, trained with the Korean Marines. Went to Japan, Philippines, Romania, the country of Georgia. Just the name off the top of my head. So a lot of travel, a lot of training, pretty much, and it's
Yeah.
kind of cool to be able to.
Was that a good experience for you, again, all the travel under your belt while you're in the Marines?
It was great. It's not like you travel and visit the countries,
Not on vacation.
you get like, yeah, you get like maybe one day of what we call liberty for you to like experience things. And you have to like maximize that. Fortunate enough, I did get to experience Tokyo. I was there for one night. And Marines act stupid and foolish, and when other people act foolish, they kind of shut everything down, and you had to pay the consequences because of somebody else's actions.
Yeah. Did you, a friend of mine was actually in Okinawa too. Talked about the tycoon parties that they participated in. I don't know if he did any of that or not, but it was kind of
not the typhoons, but I was up in Schwab on Okinawa. But I was there for very little time because we were based in Schwab, which is the north part of the island. There's not much there. A lot of protests on that base, and it was actually interesting to see the protests because as you're with the vehicles, you're coming out. You have a lot of the Japanese police out there, and you have a lot of people they also get paid to protest. And these police officers will tackle older people down to the ground just so we can get out of the vehicle. It was kind of crazy to watch it. But I wasn't there for too long because you go to the Philippines for training. I was there for like 3 weeks, and very intense heat. I remember just being there for 3 weeks, and we didn't have like showers or anything, and you're sweating so much, my camis kind of became starched on its own from just being out there. It's a crazy experience, and when you tell people that, they kind of think like it's a horror story, but you don't think of it that way. You're just there, and you're with other people, and what we call embrace the suck, and that's all it is. Where you build that camaraderie. So you pretty much know that, Skylar.
Yeah, well, that's awesome, and yeah, definitely, it's interesting too, kind of just as you with a bunch of other guys, and like to your point, you don't know. Even to your point, I went in as an enlisted too because I was one of 5 siblings, and my parents said, "Hey, we're not going to pay for college." I'm like, "Okay, well, I gotta figure it out myself." So to your point, it was but then coming out, I'd love to hear your story too, because obviously that was a culture shock of what the hell you're going to do next, that situation. So I'd love to kind of hear you get into that aspect of how you transition from military life to civilian life, and what direction you took as you kind of got out, and let's look at your options, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to go forward with it because there's a huge problem within the military community when they're transitioning out. As you know, there's a lot of veterans that commit suicide. I think the numbers are constantly going up more. The hashtag was always 22 a day, which is where people start doing 22 push-ups a day. I think it's getting a lot higher up, even though the VA has been funding a lot of money to try to prevent this, but it seems like nothing's really happening here. But transitioning out, the decision to do that was, I originally went into Marine Corps not thinking I was going to do 20 years. I just took it as, we'll see what happens. If I like it, we can do 20 years. I can maybe do Marine Security Guard Detachment, where you're an American embassy and you're doing security. And so after my 4 years, I got out. I decided to use my GI Bill and go to college. Worked for the State Department as a contractor. And that's where I got to travel even more and experience a lot unique countries, kind of like Zimbabwe, Kenya, Ethiopia. And what I was doing was going to the American embassies and accounting for security equipment such as cameras and metal detectors. So I was working full-time, traveling, and going to college full-time. So while I worked during the day, I'll go back to the hotel and I'll be writing my reports and then go to sleep and just rinse and repeat. The hardest part was always the jet lag of having to travel. But it is tough for many military members getting out because you have, I don't know, 20 guys you're with at all times, and you spend all day together. You pretty much sleep together. Um, and then all of a sudden, that whole scenario, like you just get ripped apart and you're by yourself when you get out. And that's
Right.
where you get isolated. And a lot of military members kind of unfortunately commit suicide. I have a couple buddies that's happened to it. And you always kind of question like, how can you help? And that's just the tough part. It's like you don't know why people are spread out. You have to kind of just engage and try to visit with them. But overall, it was definitely just college and working for the State Department as a contractor.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Good for you, man. You're hustling. It's my brother did the military straight out of high school. I was like, if I was to go back, I think that's probably a really good option. I didn't maybe, I wasn't sold on it necessarily at the time, but like, reflecting back on it, I think it's a really great path for young kids
Yeah.
as
It
they're
depends.
not, yeah, it's not for everybody for sure.
Yeah.
If it's wartime, it's a little bit tougher situation. But overall, it's a good stepping stone. You get out, you do 4 years, you get a security clearance of the government. You could possibly get a job with them. But the biggest benefit is obviously the GI Bill for your college to be paid for and not have to be in immense debt for a college you want to go. And there's a lot of benefits for veterans.
You're making money instead of spending it.
That's right.
Yeah, and you get paid actually while you're on the GI Bills. That's one of the greatest things. They pay for your schooling and they give you a living stipend. Depending on where you live, it depends on that cost. So if you're like in the DC area, Virginia, or even in New York, where it's a higher cost of living, you can get paid anywhere between $2,500 to like $3,000 a month tax free just for you to go to college.
Yeah. Which is
Wow.
great.
Yeah. Take notes, kids, and parents of young kids.
Yeah. And to your point, I mean, for some, it may not be the best. I had this conversation with my son recently. So he just started college, but yeah, just the structure, having I'm learning leadership skills, things like
Yeah.
that. I think obviously, if you want to talk about that and kind of what you experienced and what you took from the military and how you transitioned, how you kind of applied it to what you are doing now, maybe, and get into some of that.
Yeah, I think the Marine Corps is probably one of the best areas I've seen the best leadership, especially specifically the ones that go enlisted and then go into officer, which Skylar, we call them Mustangs, because you really understand your Marines and how they operate. And the Marine Corps has a lot of courses in how to build up individuals from a nobody into becoming an amazing leader by going through courses as they rank up. And one of the biggest thing is looking at the past, like General Lejeune. And what they say is you want to treat your subordinates kind of like a father-son relationship. You need to be stern with them, but you also need to be caring and understand where their pain points are. And me working in this like crypto industry for the last year, that's one thing I have noticed that it lacks is really good leadership that you see in the military. And mind you, there is terrible leadership in the Marine Corps, which caused a lot of people to get out. So we call it a 10-80-10. You have the 10 and part of my my French, but shit bags.
Yep.
And then you have like the 80 there GP. And then you have the 10% over here where that's like the immaculate leadership. They're really good. And these are the guys that get burnt out because they're doing all the work.
Yeah. And try to replace those guys is always a problem, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I like the 10-80-10 over the 80-20. I think that's a cool analogy.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously the way we met was through one of the events that you guys hosted. It was my first time. Maybe you could load up a clip, but it was my first time shooting an AK-47. That was still to this day one of my favorite work events that I've ever been to. So appreciate you putting those together and getting us all together there.
It's definitely not me, but it's our founder, Brian of Alpha Growth. He when you go to these events, right, you go to conferences, everybody does some type of like happy hour at a bar or some club event, and you don't even remember the people you met and you don't know what happens. So Brian found that it's more impactful to give somebody an experience and something they're going to remember. And then each year at Denver, he hosts his shooting range event. And it's way more impactful. This a lot of times the first time for people shooting. Some people are more experienced, some are not. I call this test net for anybody that's haven't gone shooting before. It's controlled chaos, right? You get to go into a range, you have people who are experienced and everybody educate you on how to handle a weapon and what's the nomenclature and get you to feel comfortable, and then you go shooting. And if you don't like it, cool. You just get off test net, you never go back on that. but maybe you do like it and you go to mainnet. And now all of a sudden you're going to be like a gun enthusiast and wants to go shooting once a month and have fun. And this is like where me and Mike were actually having conversations that I go shooting once a month essentially. And funny enough, the gym I go to actually is a gym and a shooting range in one place.
Oh, nice.
Which is pretty awesome to have a membership like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, it's definitely fun. It's to your point. I mean, anybody who shoots, goes shooting, to have a responsible gun owner at home,
Yeah, that's the key thing.
Important, right? Yeah.
That's like a key thing I always try to tell people is I understand the risk when it comes to people owning weapons and their concern. My fiance, she didn't grow up around guns. And when I first got my first handgun for home defense, she was very nervous around it. And there is an educational process, just like blockchains and crypto, there's an educational process where people have to feel comfortable and to use that. And also there are a lot of idiots in the space that have owned weapons and they don't do proper education. So that's why it's very important to understand the nomenclature, understand how to handle a weapon, understand the responsibility of holding a weapon, because that can take a life. And that is a very, very heavy responsibility that most people do not understand. And I try to emphasize that a lot, especially when we do the ETH Denver event, shooting range event. I'm always out there trying to educate and help people feel comfortable on how to place their body when they're shooting a rifle or a handgun, and get them comfortable and understand that this is not a toy to be played with. And I have to heavily emphasize that.
Yeah, definitely personal responsibility, and education removes the fear and uncertainty too when you don't know what you don't know. But it is definitely responsibility to be able to do that appropriately.
It's just like blockchain, and that's like the ethos of blockchain is personal responsibility. Understand, educate yourself, and then move forward with it. Which is why I think like gun ownership and like blockchain kind of align a little bit with their ethos. Some might not see it. I get why they won't see it, but I kind of align. That's why I call going to the ETH Denver shooting range testnet for anybody.
I like that analogy. Not good. Cool. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, let's jump right into it, John. So right into it. Tell us about what are you guys working on at Alpha Growth?
Essentially, we do growth strategies to help protocols grow, and we help some of the top DeFi leaders. Some of them that you may know are Uniswap. We do run the growth program on the DAO side. We're actually up for re-election because we did a pilot program with them. Rocket Pool is another one that we're running the growth program for as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely dive into details. Kind of give us like the kind of like high level.
Yeah, high level, just business development services. I would probably like simplest terms and partnerships that we'll go out there and run those services for a lot of DAOs. DAOs believe that they have the tech, will bring everything to them, but you have to have a symbiotic relationship between business development partnership and the tech. You can't just be one or the other.
Yeah, definitely. So what your ideal clients are then, kind of who you're going after from a partnership perspective?
Usually, most of the clients that we have are early stage or late stage. If you're in the middle, you kind of already have that Lindy, you're going forward, you don't see the purpose for this. So if you're early stage, you do see the value here, or you're late stage and you've already gone through that Lindy part and you're kind of going down. This is what I call the sun effect. It's essentially you become this bright star and you have all the euphoria, you have a whole bunch of token, everything's great, you're providing grants, you have a lot of money in your treasury. But what a lot of these DAOs do is they spend it to oblivion. And then they slowly become a white dwarf where they don't have any more tokens, they don't have any more of operating a treasury for operational cost. And that's where we are able to come in and kind of help them create a business model in order to self-sustain themselves and move forward in operational costs.
Got it. Before we dig into more of the details kind of with some of this here, I just want to maybe step back and as you got into crypto and blockchain and DeFi, what was the story, the mindset as you got into it? What were your thoughts when you first got into the space?
It's funny. My first crypto that I bought was actually Dogecoin. Okay. So it wasn't like Bitcoin or anything like that.
Yeah.
This is like back in 2017. I was still in the Marine Corps and my brother came to me and was like, buy Dogecoin, Amazon's going to accept it as payment. And I was like, I don't know what this is.
Right.
I put like $50 in. You know, the Marine Corps, you make no money, so you can't really gamble here. Yeah. And then afterwards, somebody told me about Bitcoin. I still didn't understand crypto. It was like airline points being traded on Robinhood. There was nobody there to kind of be like, this is what it is. They just told me buy it because it's going to go up.
Right.
And I'm always skeptical. I was like, anything you say buy and just automatically go up, I'm not going to buy it unless I understand what it is. Yeah. went to Marine Corps, so this is when the Marine Corps. So I got deployed, and I kind of forgot about crypto. And then 2020 hit COVID, and that's when crypto started going parabolic again, right? DeFi summer and everything. And that's when I was like, okay, there's got to be something there because this thing keeps pumping and dumping. I need to figure out why.
Yeah.
And once you go down that rabbit hole, you know how it is. You can't find enough information for you to learn.
Yeah.
And you're just going down the rabbit hole, trying to listen to podcasts, writing Medium articles, as much as you can get to understand what it was. Is what one of those things that I listen to, like Bankless, a lot, and one of their quotes that always like resonated with me was, "You come for the money, but you stay for the tech." And that was like my reasoning for going through that last bull cycle, and then through the bear market, and then not to this bull cycle. And also the ethos of having to be able to control your own funds. It's so important, especially for like us. Like I'm Hispanic, and I have a lot of family members that don't understand finance, and this kind of pushes them to that understand finance and also be in control of that. And this is like a way I try to educate others in my community about how to own their own funds. But you can even like go take your ETH, go to Compound and borrow against it. And let's say you want to remodel your kitchen, I can do that. I don't even have to sign no paperwork. They don't need to know my name, none of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I can do that. I can borrow $5,000 in less than 5 minutes, cash out, and then start remodeling my kitchen. And then it's a variable rate. Yes, I need to monitor it, but it's not a parabolic. And I can't wait for it to get to the part where crypto can start providing fixed rate loans.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the end goal is like, I wish I can buy a home using like DeFi, not go through a bank. That would be amazing.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah. 100%. So, my understanding from your services, so really you guys, like on the earlier stage, you guys are going to help them with funding. You guys are going to help build the ecosystems and the treasury management. Those are kind of the three key things that I took away from that part. Yeah.
Yeah, we've actually kind of categorized some of that stuff that we do. So we obviously do treasury management and be able to help DAOs earn yield on their funds, because sometimes DAOs just have ETH and they're being diluted. So
Sure.
simple thing, stake your ETH, right?
Yeah.
And then you can kind of go a step further into providing into DeFi and earning yield. You see this with Aave slightly, where they have their treasury and they
Right. So we got the treasury management side, and then the other side, kind of the ecosystem building.
Yeah,
is that right?
Treasury management, token as a product, help you find token depth and velocity for your token, so you have better price discovery on DeFi.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having that on centralized exchange, that's like a really big caveat, because you just see pump and dumps on token products.
Yeah.
We do DeFi in a box is what we call for the ecosystem. So you have a chain, you don't know how to run DeFi. We have like a structured DeFi in a box, how to do that, running through the 7 things that make money in crypto. And just really quick, like one of those 7 things, it's CDPs, DEXs, staking, lending markets, perpetuals, bridges, and interest rate swaps. Those are 7 things for you to make money in crypto.
Very cool.
Yeah. Cool. And then
finding VCs, not really, but we have the data points within our website to guide you through that process. Not that we are running the funding raise for you.
Yeah.
Got it.
Very
Okay, cool. Let's dive into the ecosystem building. So, kind of, I guess, like, take us from the start. Token comes to you guys. Maybe it's an earlier stage. Maybe they just raise a lot of capital. How are they typically thinking about ecosystem growth, and how do you guys kind of, what do you guys want to give them?
Great question. It depends on whether they're whether they're a chain or whether they're a protocol, right? Because chain has to be more DeFi in a box, because you had to create a DeFi ecosystem. If you're a protocol, you're running your protocol is your like main reason for things. But what we discussed, Mike and Das, is that your token and your protocol are 2 sides of the same coin. So your token needs to be a product of its own. And that's where most protocols fail to realize. They think, oh, I'm just going to stake my token. You're going to get a whole bunch of emissions. But you need to provide more fees or more yield to your users that offsets that emission higher than your emissions. That's the biggest problem. And how do you find that?
Yeah.
Is you have to create what we call liquidity sync or token depth between all the DeFi protocols on the 7 things that we discussed. And I call it the DeFi tech stack. So you got to work down that tech stack.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, as you kind of go through this, kind of what are some of the conversations you're having in real time these days? Now it's 2025. There's a lot that's changed in the last few years related to DeFi and everything else. I just love to hear kind of some of the thought processes you guys are going through with potential clients?
Yeah, every client is different. We kind of tailor everything white gloves, and it's based on the needs. Not everybody has the same needs as others. One of the biggest examples you can see is Alpha Growth. We're running the DeFi ecosystem for Ronin chain. So here, this is a chain that's been meant for gaming, right? It's all about gaming. It has Axie Infinity. It grew really massively in the last bull market, but unfortunately, it had a bridge hack that kind of dwarfed it. And they have been able to be this kind of phoenix rising out of the ashes now to revitalize themselves and still focus on gaming, but also understand. And this is the biggest part, is like some chains do and don't. If you're a chain, we know that DeFi is the backbone for any blockchain. That is the best product market fit that crypto has been able to find, and it's not going to dethrone it. And you had to have some kind of DeFi on your chain for you to, one, earn fees and get people interested. So as we're running this DeFi ecosystem on Ronin, they're still focusing on gaming. We're able to assist them by providing utility and bringing certain protocols into their chain. And one of them is, for example, is Compound, to be able to allow people to use their RON and borrow against it. And then hopefully we can run this with some of the gaming tokens, but you have to work a lot through the details. And one of the biggest thing is creating Dex liquidity. And if you don't have the Dex liquidity, it makes it harder for you to be able to borrow against, because you need to have the liquidity to create those liquidations when unfortunate events get unwound.
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit. Talk to us about Dex liquidity. How does...
Yeah, that's like the cold start problem, right? Which is why a lot of people like to use certain VE dexes, right, to be able to bribe their way into getting those emissions. You see probably the most efficient and best dex that's out there doing this is Aerodrome. Has been very successful. For every dollar you put in, you get $1 or $1.70. I think it's like 1.7x emission. It just depends on the epoch. And that's like one of the best ways of bootstrapping that liquidity. You have to have incentives.
Okay, so essentially, okay, yeah, you were just about to say. So you're incentivizing these folks.
Yes, you have to have incentives, but the biggest problem is with incentives. We're not back in 2021 DeFi summer where you can just create linear incentive management. Now you have to kind of be more OTC trading desk, and you see this with Royal Capital and Berachain is created this strategy that they are able to tailor a deal saying provide liquidity here for X amount of days and you'll get this amount of yield. Yeah. And somebody can counter saying, I want more yield or less yield. But you can kind of see what the market is looking for on yield through certain protocols like Pendle or Spectra, saying like, okay, this is what the yields that people are looking for. And you have to kind of meet it. But if you're new, you need to get a little bit higher than the current rate. A little jump there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So as these chains kind of build out, are they kind of funding, like, or are they?
Yeah. So this is where like really treasury management works really well for a chain. If you're able to do this effectively, you have to kind of deploy the capital in order to kind of seed that liquidity into these different protocols, and then you are going to use your incentives in order to guide retail or even just institution into these certain protocols that you want. So there's a lot of levers you have to pull and get them through that story. So like you will see this in all the different DeFis where you start with the DEX, but you work your way to tech stack because you want to create that liquidity sink into every single DeFi protocol. And then as you work your way, you start noticing which ones need more attention than the others. So you start with the DEX and you work your way, but sometimes you need to go back to like step 1 or 2 over here. And it's like, okay, this needs a little bit more love so we can get more supply rates or higher collateral on like the lending markets. So it's a constant.
Yeah. So you start with the DEX.
Actually, number one, in our opinion, you want to start with the CDP. If you're going to do anything, you start with the CDP.
Could you sorry for acronym,
collateralize that position. So like, what is it that Ethereum did really well is that they had Maker or Sky now, right? And what is the number one use case for like most, if you want to have a thriving ecosystem in DeFi, you need to have stablecoins. If you don't have stablecoins, you're going to find it very difficult for any type of DeFi to really flourish. Right. So having a CDP, and one of the best ones that I've seen out there is Liquidity V2. And they're doing these different types of forks everywhere. And the Liquidity V2 is really great because it doesn't leak any value. 75% of all those interest rates goes into what they call a stability pool. 25% can go into incentivizing. I'm not gonna get like too much into detail there, but essentially stablecoin is the lifeblood for you to be able to have a successful DeFi, and you need to have a lot of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's really interesting. Um,
Yeah.
what are some overlooked situations or challenges that people maybe now don't pay attention to starting out, that you have to kind of go back to and kind of iterate on? Obviously, you talked about paying attention to different levers, but anything that's maybe most commonly overlooked as a process or a thought process going into some of these nuances here.
Instead than I do, especially like working in DeFi. But for this year that I've been here, I think too many people think that if I build the tech and it's great, they're just going to naturally come, and that's not the case. You have to create these different partnerships. You have to be out there. Like I'll go back to like Lido. Lido is a staking protocol, or even Aave, lending market. Those are household name brands in DeFi, and you know them. Why is it that they were so successful? They had a mean BD team just going out there and getting in, creating this type of utility for Aave and for Lido. And now Lido STETH is like the lifeblood for any type of like LRT protocol and any type of DeFi protocol. You want wrap staked ETH in every single protocol you want. You talk to anybody, that's what they're looking for when it comes to a staking token. It's the wrap staked ETH as the base, and then you get all the LRTs, and you create these like leverage looking strategies on it. So
has there been any tokens maybe over like the last like 6 months that you see?
I think they did really well in the beginning, and they could have probably pushed it a little bit more, but the protocol virtuals, I thought was very smart, where they paired every single one of those AI agent tokens with the virtual tokens.
Right.
And what they ended up creating was like a Forex exchange where you had to go through their virtual token. If they would have leaned more into the DeFi side with virtuals on getting it buried as many dexes and other areas of like DeFi utility, I think the token could have been very, very successful. But they started off really well.
We were speaking a couple of weeks ago about some of the protocols you guys work with, like Arbitrum as an example. Could you kind of talk about some of the things that you guys did for these different groups?
So with Arbitrum, we work on behalf of Compound, and that's one of our marquee clients. With Compound, we got one of the biggest Arbitrum LTIP incentives program. So I think it was like 1.3, 1.4 million ARB tokens. And we are able to actually provide incentives on the Arbitrum that for every dollar we received, every dollar we put out there of Arbitrum, we got $140 back into the protocol and into Arbitrum ecosystem. And open blocks to the analytics, I think we're like, if not the best, or if not the top 5 best performers when it came to the LTIP program. And I'm happy to share that information, the documentation on that as well later on. And I think we brought like over 800 million TVL to Compound at the time. Obviously, prices are down now, so it's a little bit different.
Yeah, very cool. So for every dollar that you guys invested in the ecosystem, there was $140 that realized here.
Through our incentive management and how we do that. So we're able to continuously do that and do it for other protocols. But that's been the best success campaign that I can provide you of information.
That's pretty impressive. We talked about retail versus institutional and high level earlier. Kind of mentioned that, but where do you see the relationship going? Obviously, with these DeFi protocols and platforms out there from an institutional perspective, as more players come into the space, what's the perception? How do they view DeFi? Obviously, it's very unique in the process, as we all know. Just curious.
It's actually pretty interesting. Last week I was in DC and we had a crypto capital event. And there's this influential person called Cup of Joseph. He's in the Arbitrum community. He runs a collateralized debt position on Arbitrum. And there's this like, some people call it a dark underbelly, or some people just say like just how it is. But there's a lot of under the table deals when it comes to these protocols. You have a cold start problem. You need to get liquidity. You're not going to get enough of the retail attention to really get it going. So some of these institutions will come in and be like, hey, we can, provide liquidity here, and you'll see the TVL go up, which is why you have to like look into the DeFi llama, and you see like all of a sudden TVL goes up and sustains for a certain time period and then it goes down. It could have most likely been that they just had liquidity locked up for 90 days and gave X APR to that person to leave it there. get things going, get the attention around like, oh, look, TVL is going up, gets retail to go there. As retail's there, you kind of slowly TWAP out. It's not a bad move. It's not, people can look at a negative, some people look at positive. It just depends on the person, but that's, I see a lot of that is gonna,
It brings
I see a
attention.
lot more of this is gonna start happening. With, especially with institutional coming in, because they have a lot of that capital that they can
Right.
put in. Because I talked to buddies of mine, they're in banking and other people that used to work for Bank of America and other areas, and I tell them that there are places they can put their US dollars and earn double-digit yields, and they're just mind blown. Like, how is that even possible?
Let's pivot to the treasury management side of your business. So, kind of give us an overview. So, what do you guys?
Yeah, happy to. It's pretty simple. There's a lot of DAOs that have their treasury, and sometimes it depends on the profile. Some of them have very concentrated in their own governance token, and understandably so, right? You launch a protocol, you get your token, you create the foundation, so on and so forth. But there, you have to kind of slowly build up a treasury in blue chip assets like Bitcoin, ETH, maybe Solana if you see it that way. Depends on who it is and where in the ecosystem you are. And then stablecoins, right? Because you need to pay for operation costs to fund everything. The question is, how do you do that if you're a protocol that has a lot of your own governance token? And then there's another side of where you have protocols that are very diversified in their ETH and stablecoins, and they need to essentially earn yields because they don't want to just spend to oblivion. You have to pay, again, you have to pay for operating costs. Aave is a perfect example on this side of things, where they earn revenue through their lending, through the spread of the lending and borrowing. They get all the different types of assets, and what do they do? They redeploy it back into their own protocol to earn yields. You can get more aggressive on it and run it through many different DeFi protocols and earn yields that way. And this is kind of somewhat running kind of like a hedge fund, right? Because you're earning yield for your capital that you're deploying, and you're getting it back for the treasury, but you're able to fund your costs that you need and grow, and that's like the successful way of doing things. And the way we like, at least the way I see it, and like some people in our company see, is this is where things are going to eventually get to, is DAOs are going to become somewhat of like a hedge fund slash VC style entity.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, dude. So to kind of summarize that, you guys are these groups are they generate all these tokens from the money they receive from investors, and they kind of need to hedge that. Otherwise, if their asset goes down 90%, they're
Yeah,
capitalists at the end of the day.
can't, the DAO implodes, right? You have no more money to fund yourself, and it kind of dies. So you need to, and this is where like those that are in like the late stage, and they kind of see that happening. We're able to come in and help them create a business model out of it. And this is something that we were able to successfully do for Compound, where if you notice, Compound doesn't just randomly launch onto like every single chain. It's very strategic. We go onto a
Yeah,
chain, and
right.
it's because we're having conversations with the foundation or the DAO in order to figure out like, what is the strategic plan here, where we're not wasting developer costs of like create the code and spend it up here, and the DAO, in the Compound DAO, doesn't get anything back from that, right? We can't just have something dead there. And a perfect example of this is actually, I like to use the example of Uniswap. Uniswap is an avalanche, and it's just there. There's not a lot of growth or TBL going there because there's no attention or love going there. So that we try to be more focused and strategic on how we deploy a protocol and make sure that's successful, and the DAO can reap the rewards of what it's spent on developer cost.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Is it easy to become like cross chain, like, or like multi chain? When you take a protocol like Compound, like, could is it easy enough on a new protocol tomorrow?
It depends if it's like EVM compatible or equivalent, right? So some like the chains like ZK Sync or Starknet, they're ZK VMs, so it's not as easy where it's just a fork it over and copy pasta that. You have to, there are some developer costs, but when it comes to some of the other chains, like obviously Optimism, Arbitrum, some of these other EVMs that are very equivalent, those are a little bit easier. It's not as time consuming for the developers. But I'm also not a tech developer, so I can't like go through the nuance of how it is. I just do know that when it comes to like the ZK tech, it's a little bit of more difficult compared to like the other.
For sure.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're kind of making those decisions. You're advising the client on strategic moves as you kind of look at, like you said, developer costs, other nuances, what are the incentives? This is all happening in real time, right? Based on kind of what the business model looks like.
So I call us the coordinators. Some people, I just want to make sure it's like we're not decision makers. We go and we speak to a lot of different individuals. We're like business developers. You get on calls, you create strategies, you try to figure out what is success here. Once we have a plan that we think is materialized, then we present it to the DAO, go to the forum, go to the delegates. Some delegates love it, some don't. We have to kind of do that politicking and maybe have to go through an educational process. Maybe a delegate doesn't understand it because they need to get a little bit better educated on what we're trying to do. So we're more like coordinators, similar to how Danny Ryan was a coordinator for the merge. The merge wasn't a centralized vector for the Ethereum community, but everybody was aligned and he coordinated everything to go forward, ensured that was a smooth transition into the merge. Think was the same way when it comes to deploying like Compound to a new protocol or some of our other partners that we work with and being work on that.
What have you seen from tokens that maybe things don't go as well? Like, they tend to add a lot of their own sell pressure with some of these tokens in their treasury. What are some kind of like key examples that you've seen of tokens that have done this? And maybe they've come back for them and maybe they haven't, but
tokens is hard, right? You every single token you see, it's just a constant, like a pump when it originally comes out and then just slowly dumps away. And you have to figure out how to offset those emissions by providing higher yield somewhere else. If you're like a protocol like a Dex, your fees need to outweigh the emissions that you're putting out there. That's the way how it is. I haven't, off the top of my head, I haven't seen a token that has had a pump and dump and be successful. And then the other side of thing is, I feel like the industry sees tokens kind of like equities, and we need to kind of take that away from it because this is probably why it also fails, because your thought process when you release a token is that you don't want it as an equity, but you also need to kind of allow for some exit liquidity if you have investors, or maybe it's also for good reason because you want to compensate your users. There's a lot of reasons, right? But the biggest issue is that when people launch a token, all they do is like, okay, I'm going to launch a token. I'm just going to create two pools, an ETH and my token, and then a USDC and my token. And I tell them, well, what you just did is you pair your token to a premium asset that everybody wants. So you're just creating automatic sell pressure. You have to be more like what I said, virtuals pair with other like-kind assets within your realm. And you want to have it more like Forex, and then you are kind of earning on some of the volatility there, and you're creating utility for your token. You want it to get as close as you can to a commodity base and moneyness. That was the whole point of having all these currencies and tokens. You want it to be commodity. And this also helps strip away the thought of anybody thinking that this is kind of like an equity to your protocol. And what I said in the beginning is two sides of the same coin. You have your token as a product and you have your protocol.
Definitely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One thing we touched around recently as well is in terms of like hedging loans, because like you mentioned earlier, a lot of these loans on DeFi protocols end up being variable loans. What have you seen? Are there things developing right now, or how are you guys getting away from that, or your clients getting away?
It's weird because like in traditional markets, variable rates are there. It's just that we don't see it as retail investors. So like when you have a home, those tranches of home loans are being traded in the back end at a variable rates while we get the fixed. So we need to figure out how to bring that onto like DeFi. This is something that we're working with, like interest rate swaps, and we're like having constant discussions, a lot of protocols, and trying to figure out like what can we do. I've seen certain things where somebody has like an AMM that offers that. We do have like the Pendles and Spectras that you can trade the PT and YT token, but that kind of works more like bond market. It's not necessarily working its way there into fixed rate loans. I think there's a there. We just haven't figured out the proper way, and we just have to experiment more with it. We're going to have to see some blowups. But I do believe we're going to get there eventually. But it has to be like you have Compound as the layer, and then you have like the other upper end here trading those fixed and fixed and variable rates to be able to offer those fixed rates to people.
Right. TradFi.
Yeah. So I think like NFTs is a good use case for this. Like Liquidity V2 forks, they're collateralized depositions. They actually offer fixed rate loans, but the problem with that is you can be liquidated based on how the market moves. So you're gonna have to either over collateralize more, or you have to pay down your debt. Um, so that's like one step there, getting closer, right? And then you can start trading those NFT pairs. So let's say I took $10,000 out with my ETH, and I don't want to close my position. I can sell it to you at a like slight 5% discount. You can close my position and you take that arbitrage difference. So having that utility, and if that grows and materializes, we can possibly get into having like fixed rate. But mind you, I don't have a TradFi background at all. I got into crypto and I'm like speed running, learning this whole entire process.
No,
Crypto.
it's all good, man. What about other industry trends you're seeing, good or bad, that you kind of are seeing develop or emerging in real time here? Anything that's kind of catching your eye outside what we talked about?
We have a veil believing things are decentralized, but they're not as decentralized as they really are. Um, and like perfect example of this is you have I mean, it's not a good example, but an example like I say is like Uniswap has their fee switch that they constantly want. Um, A16Z comes in and just like, no, we don't want the fee switch. You can have the whole community say yes, but if they have such a high amount of their tokens, but it is decentralized where the protocol itself, they can't do anything to it. It's immutable. V1, V2, it's immutable. V3 and V4, Uniswap cannot get people to move their liquidity from V2 into V3 and V4 just because the way it's decentralized and immutability is. So there is great DeFi, great immutability there. But we also, I think we need to have more people participate in governance and understand what DeFi is and how it works, and to be able to execute and push more. I think we have a lot more thought leaders and like, oh, this is great, but we need to have more people like, let's go ahead and do this and push this forward.
Is there typically a like pretty high percent, I mean, obviously it's going to vary protocol to protocol, but is it typically like a plus you see?
I don't think so. I'm most of these protocols, they just have their usual people, because like for you, if you own a whole bunch of your tokens of some protocol that you didn't really care for, are you going to constantly go into the forums and kind of go in there and have conversations and look for the best? It's opportunity cost that you just don't see yourself getting involved with unless you have skin in the game where it affects you so much. And then I think that thing in crypto hasn't been solved. Where are you going to start paying people to be delegators, right? And I was like, okay, now are they going to be able to be bribed to like vote your own ways? There's not a real reason.
You can't even get an email if you wanted it.
They have high enough that it makes sense for you to do anything, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult game that is like trying to be solved. But I think Alpha Growth has done really well at being like a growth program for Compound, because we had a re-election campaign recently, and we had the most engagement from the community come out onto our forums and vote. We lost the vote, but Compound hasn't had such a high turnout on the community speaking on the forums and in the vote, because of the work that we were able to do for the last year. And having someone in the middle as a coordinator to communicate between partnerships and business development and your ecosystem, and kind of like get them interested and engaged, having that middleman is very important. Even though we lost, but what we learned is the community really did enjoy our work.
How do you see Alpha Growth's role?
I do hope to see and to continue to be able to push forward on the like idea fronts and help develop new crypto primitives and ways to grow the DeFi ecosystem, whether like we're the middleman connecting TradFi into DeFi, or just working in like DeFi partnerships and creating ideas. I've learned so much being in this company because of the people that are here. Every day I'm in meetings and I'm probably the dumbest person in the room, that's where you want to be in. And that's the great thing, is every day I'm learning something new from everybody here. So I do see Alpha Growth getting more involved into DeFi space, helping push the crypto mission of having to be more decentralized and get more people on chain to enjoy the things that we constantly enjoy in crypto. I mean, I take loans out on Compound all the time and use DeFi to earn yields, and there's a lot of opportunity there that I feel people have to still work their way through that educational process. And I hope to be able to be that
Yeah.
arbiter to get them through that.
Untapped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what
I love it, man. Awesome. Well, John, this has been a lot of fun, man. Great chatting with you as always. We appreciate you taking the time. We're working more about alpha growth.
Yeah. So at least for myself, I am on X, on Twitter, well, however you want to call it. It's SSJ2_Spartan. Alpha growth handle is the alpha growth altogether with number 1. That's our page on X. We are also on LinkedIn. You can find me as Jonthony. Happy to talk about anything DeFi. Happy to work on any partnerships that if your protocol needs help with any type of like DeFi strategy or help grow, happy to get on a call. Always share my Calendly with anybody and talk on them as well.
That's awesome. Well, this has been great, John. We appreciate you joining us, brother. And thanks for your service. And we'll make sure to include all that in the show as well.